We're here.
Are we ready?
Yep.
Okay. So, good morning. To conduct this meeting virtually in accordance with the Fairfax County Boards, Authorities, and Commissions remote participation policies, we need to take a roll call vote and verify that our remote participants' voices are clear and audible. To do so, I will conduct a roll call for those AHAC members on the virtual call. When your name is called, please state your name and your call-in location for remote participation. Throwing it over to you, Dr. Kincannon. Terry, can you state your name and location?
You
are muted.
And I can't unmute him.
There, now I'm unmuted. So I can't hear you very well. It seems to be echoing a lot, and I'm not sure whether that's on my end or your end, but this is Kerry Kincannon. I'm a resident of Mount Vernon. Right now I'm on the eastern shore of Maryland.
Thank you. And then I'm just going to do a quick roll call. Maura Williams, Joe Mandaro, Bill Norcross, Neil McAfee, Nick Franco, and our staff, Tom Cleveland, Megan Van Dam, and Olivia Strobel, and Carrie Wilson. Is there anybody else who is joining us? Therefore, I move that the voices of all AHAC members participating remotely are clear, audible, and can be adequately heard in accordance with VAC policy for remote meeting participation. Do I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions. Okay, thank you. Now we can begin our meeting. Thank you so much. And Carrie, we'll try and speak up, make sure you can hear us. Just a couple of things that are coming up and that are in your notes, and I just wanted to cover membership news. We do have, and first of all, I bring you greetings from Rick Sullivan, who was in court this morning, so he was not able to join us. And just FYI, John Boylan has lost his mother-in-law, so I'll be sending a card on behalf of us just to check in with him. So he sent his regards. We are going to be, there are 2 new members that have been appointed who will be joining AHAC coming up, and that is Ryan Sharif. Am I saying it?
Sheriff.
We do say Sheriff. I don't know. From when he was at CAF 1, then with you all. Ryan Sheriff is joining us, and he is the appointee at one of the, I can't remember. Right.
He's the financial institution.
Financial institution, frankly, he's at Red Mac now, that's right. And then Sarah Selvaraj D'Souza has been appointed by the Hunter Mill District. Is that Nancy Soccer was on the committee and she has resigned. So Supervisor Alcorn has appointed Sarah, who is the founder and chair of Reston Strong. There are 1 or 2, there are some other appointments that are vacant or renewing, and we are pursuing, since we're going into a new year, there are a couple of members who have not been able to participate, and so we'll be looking into that. Are there any questions about membership? So the second thing is we did talk a few months ago about the fact that the Board of Supervisors, after when AHAC was rechartered, Housing Department had the Homeless Services Department had come under Housing, and so it was really felt that we could bring these together under our charter. But with the focus, the end of our 10-year plan on homelessness and sort of really looking at the great needs that are emerging after an evaluation by staff, and the board has decided to separate and set up a separate COC. Maura is currently the chair of that COC and will likely remain on that, of course. So with that, we are going to have to we wanted to get ahead of it, sort of propose some revisions to our charter, not to say that we're not going to be looking at homelessness, and there are certainly an integration, but to ensure that we're clear about the COC has a very specific role, that there is currently membership that is in common, because the COC, as approved by the board, will have appointments from some of the provider agencies, which is new, frankly, and we can talk a little bit more about that, but it will enable from the existing homeless service provider group members who are in common. So we have several members on this AHAC, Joe Fay, and Eleanor Vincent and Laura, who might be able to fulfill a dual role. So I think we provided to you in your packet a very rough draft of potential new charter that we would take June 23rd. This is really for us to provide by advice. Tom will take that to the board of supervisors because this is their committee. But just took a quick look at this charter. I know it's hard to read, but basically as you scroll through this, and I'll give you some time to look at it, but in terms of our purpose, eliminated our responsibility around homelessness, but it's not out of our agenda altogether. I was seeking some advice and will from our staff on the structure language because we no longer have two charters embedded in one. So that's my comment there. And the real issue is that I moved the purpose, the statement on the purpose for homelessness, took it out of purpose and really moved it down into duties to make it more of a conversation and how we will integrate. Because the COC will have the responsibility for homelessness. We will have an opportunity to comment as it relates to, of course, housing for the homeless. That makes sense?
So back to how it was before we made the change and we brought them together.
Basically.
In effect.
Basically. And then added homelessness into the list of issues that are at the intersection of affordable housing. So again, to really make it more as one of those things that is, of course, we think about, but not that we are responsible for. And then everything else is pretty much the same. The one thing that we're in conversation with Tom again is that today AHAC has a named representative that the COC chair sits on this committee, and we'd like to keep that, to have that continuity. The chair and or another designated member from the COC that the new board will allow. And I think we were okay with that. And then likewise, so we would have, in this case, the way Maura worked on the homelessness task force. We always know what's going on with the COC, and she was part of the conversations that John and Eleanor prepared for us. That makes sense? So notwithstanding when the staff and our legal counsel fix this, if you all are okay with the basic gist of this, what we will do then is it'll go to legal counsel, then I'll we'll also update the bylaws, and then we'll bring that back on June 23rd.
And then subsequent to that, I'll need to see. We'll check in with the county attorney's office to see whether or not the board even needs to act on this, given that they have already acted to create the COC board. This is almost seems to me like something we could do administratively, but we'll just double check that.
That you would know what to do, but we will just update our governing documents so that we're all clear.
Right.
And to be very frank with you, there are a lot of us around the table that care a lot about homelessness. All of us do. But now I want to make sure that now that there is another body that we respect its role, particularly as it's designated by HUD, we have to have this separate body, and that we really just use it more as information, as we will, like with fair housing going forward, where there will be a process, a structure set up for fair housing. We still want to have an annual report on it and have comment, but it will not be led out of a. So that's kind of the approach we're taking, if that makes sense.
What was the backstory for the change? The why?
You want to talk about it more?
Just wondering.
Sure. So when the county decided that they wanted to merge OPH with us, we were encouraged to look at a way so as not to create two different BACs, for this function. So the idea, was to just sort of test out for a couple years whether or not it might work to, kind of have this be sort of blended. And I think, you know, especially given the direction from the board that they want to have a new homelessness plan and, you know, that it just, you know, we just weren't set up to do something like that.
Gotcha.
So the idea was to, you know, kind of give it back its, you know, sort of its prominence as a standalone issue that's connected to us, but that operates under its own flag. So
So that's gonna move forward and we'll just make sure that we're all clear. And I think that, will lead into number 2 on our agenda, but I wanted to stop and just, is there anything else just under general announcements convening that anybody wants to share? Any good news on this or?
if you all don't, I will.
No, we're proud of being on the heels of the homelessness scenario. We're proud that the Lamb Center is finally ranked for 9% tax credits. So it's moving forward. So I'm excited.
Similarly, government center received, or we expect to receive an allocation. In June 20.
Congratulations.
Lots of help from lots of people.
Yes.
So.
That's really awesome. We are, thank you. And when we think about in particular, you know, the Lamb Center Wesley project is, it's gonna be so important. We're just talking about that, as you said. And, we're also excited to see the government center transformed. So, any other announcements? Jill had a wonderful Navajo annual meeting and celebration for Michelle, but also just Jill to commend you for how seamlessly the transition and the leadership of Navajo. It was just a great event.
Yeah, thank you. We're so amazing in this family supported it. So appreciate it. It's to keep continuing to work together. So that's great. Thank you.
From you, boss, that's not down here.
A couple things, if I could, just really briefly, 2 comments. Number one, Jill, just congratulations. You know, I just want to add my voice to it's been a very seamless transition, although, you know, we certainly miss Michelle, you know.
Who's Michelle?
Just kidding. I told you not to do that.
It's Friday.
So, but Jill, I just want to thank you for your partnership and your new role. I want to also say to Nick and Camilla, congratulations on behalf of the staff here. We know it has been a struggle. You know, we know there have been, you know, and it's not over yet, but you know, but I will just say, you know, for Camilla, the sea change that you all helped facilitate in the city of Fairfax is not to be underestimated. And we are, you know, the housing authority in particular is just really tickled to be able to be a partner with you with the vouchers and, you know, so just congratulations. And I mean, that is going to make a real demonstrable difference in a problem we're all trying to address.
Your point, couldn't do it without you all. So absolutely
Well,
appreciate it.
Absolutely a team sport, you know, unless you have, you know, a crummy partner like that guy, Nick.
Yeah. Don't work with me.
So, you know, similarly, I mean, the residences at the government center part 2, phase 1, is it, you know, is just, it's gonna be a tremendous project, and it is, you know, it is truly a statement about all of us working together to deliver new affordability, and that it's truly a visible symbol of, you know, the board's commitment to this. I do also want to just, you know, acknowledge that, you know, we opened Arrowbrook a couple weeks ago and just thrilled about that. Autumn Willow is breaking ground. That's the project. That's the Michaels senior project. In Mr. Harity's district is breaking ground on July 20th. So if you can try to be there, that would be great.
I would love to.
Yes, indeed. And Nick worked at Michael's when it was awarded. So and then, you know, finally after a brief 40-year struggle, North Hill is opening on Wednesday.
That's
So,
what it was.
Stage.
So just really, really appreciate everyone's support. And finally, I'll just note, Nick was out at a community meeting last night about the PennDOS shelter. And this is the replacement of, the old Eleanor Kennedy shelter. And we have, I think, gotten beyond, at least at this point, the premise argument. And now we're talking about design and, how many, what the mix of bedrooms ought to be and the affordable housing and how it's all gonna look. And, it's a real testament in part to, to the advocacy that members of AHAC have done. I mean, God bless Mary Payton. She was there last night handing out buttons that she had made, I mean, that's what it takes to get this stuff done, on the community side. So lots and lots and lots of stuff happening, and we've got lots more on the way. So,
Thank you for sharing. And Carrie, I hope you can hear this. And I know the years of work that, you and your congregation, but your advocacy has contributed around in South County and along there. And thanks for showing up for things like that too,
yeah,
as a wonderful community member.
That's my neighborhood. For
It's important.
be on the other side of the
Yeah.
voting. It's kind of fun.
So thank you. Thanks, Tom. That was great. And it really speaks to, as we come back to our charter. We've had a busy year. We're talking about some of our subcommittee kind of working around the edges, but I'm always struck again, first and foremost, is that our job was about monitoring how we're doing against the housing plan and what's happening. And Tom and Megan and I have talked about now updating again the materials in the way that we've talked about with the dashboard at our first meeting, just to make sure that we're seeing the picture. This is senior housing. These are the affordability. These are the ways in which we're contributing. These are the developments that are providing permanent supportive housing, really reaching our most vulnerable. So the more that we can become fluent with our own elevator speech on all of this and showing up, I'm going to count on you all to help me as the staff make sure we have the dates for any things we need to show up for and do a better job of trying to get those out to the committee this year. My assistant at work, Aaron Clark, has agreed to help create a calendar of sorts and something to keep, and working with the staff that we can get that out to everybody on a more regular basis to keep them in the know. So with that, just speaking in terms of subcommittee organization and staffing, because there is so much that's exciting that's moving forward through HCD. We know that we were frankly blessed to have Regina Coyle, who had dedicated time to work on this for a little bit, and Megan doesn't do anything, so I'm really happy with her support. But generally speaking, one of the things we've talked about is how to organize things again so that these meetings are meaningful, so that we're moving work forward. And we really relied heavily, thank you, on subcommittees this year and the chairs, but it also, because of public meeting notice and everything else, it requires so much administrative support. That Malia has been involved in, and not to mention Tom and Megan and team. So we're really going to look at that and how the subcommittees work this year to be more focused, and have the folks that are taking the lead be the chair, work more closely with me and Red to come to the meeting prepared, limiting the number of side meetings and doing it here if we need to have a conversation. So trying to really scale that down. And I'd like to, I was wondering about this, maybe at our first meeting, we can talk about it as well, new members in June. But I think we need to remind everybody about the rules, the FOIA rules. And, when there's 3 of us who are sitting on this board talking, it's a public meeting.
Mhm.
So there's been a lot of email exchange, and sometimes it gets a little confused as to whether I'm in an advocacy meeting or whether I'm speaking on behalf of AHAC. So I will reiterate some of that. I think we need to do that to keep things moving forward. So, yeah.
If 3 of us go to the groundbreaking at Autumn Willow, does that constitute? It's not like, that doesn't become like a foyable, it's not a meeting, right?
No, no, it does not unless the three of you decide business of this BAC.
Gotcha.
So, but generally speaking, if you're invited to, like if members of the board are invited to a groundbreaking and 3 or 4 of them show up, it's not publicly noticed as a meeting.
Okay.
So,
It's just more when we got used to this during the pandemic, doing business by email or, the virtual meetings, we're using the script to be careful. And we all know what happened with, a lawsuit, everything else that overturned a major regulation. So anyways, those are just minor things that I'll ask for the executive committee's help. And as we set the work plan for the new year, really thinking about, obviously, the budget committee, that was a huge success. There might be a need for a meeting to come together to bring forward what do we need, but then limiting the number of meetings. So we were meeting pretty frequently, particularly legislative and some others. So it just kind of, that's how we're going to try and work in the coming year. And then I'll turn it over to Tom.
if I could just
Yeah,
make
please.
a couple of comments on this too. Number one, just sort of a note of gratitude, not only for Regina, who is now enjoying her well-earned retirement, but also for Megan and Malia, who have worked so hard to make sure that we're able to, carry on here, in the absence of, really any staff to do this. And, I will really appreciate the support of the executive committee as we sort of streamline all of this, to where we have, sort of a budget coordinator and a legislative coordinator, and we work sort of more in this forum. I will just note as well, just because I feel like I need to, that the question of a fair housing committee from this group, a few things is that fair housing is all of our responsibility, but HCD cannot be, we are ourselves a landlord, and so we cannot be, we cannot really staff a fair housing committee, from that perspective, and there's nobody to do it. So, I am exploring with some of my partners within the county structure to see if there might be a way that, perhaps another agency might be able to provide support to us here, in sort of a coordinator type situation, as opposed to, trying to staff, another committee as well. So
That was something that I'll get to when we get to the subcommittee. My 7:30 a.m. call with Mary Payton was sharing some of that, but getting instruction on that and some things to bring to the table this morning. But I did talk with her a little bit about that. Thank you. Great. So we're going to streamline. We're going to lean on you all. And with that, it's great. You put people on the agenda, they don't come. So I'm going to go first. That's first to Joe. With again, our gratitude for your leadership this year.
Sure. And to some point, definitely a team sport, and I think that, we'll be able to pivot and work with a new way of doing it. I do think we got the benefit of the groundwork that was laid this last year. I think that in many respects, the process worked. We didn't end up at the end of the day with additional baseline funding, but we do, I think we have conveyed to the board, and a number of them have repeated it now on a couple of occasions, the fact that what we really need until we get to that baseline is to make sure that the inflow of funds is sufficient to get the projects that are working, and that we have the cash flow. So that's, I think, in my mind, the major success of the effort. Going forward, we, in addition to sort of what I think makes the most obvious sense in terms of the work, we've got a number of members, and I think this makes perfect sense too, who really want us to think about how we can better access, other funds, philanthropic funds, et cetera, because really haven't, focused on that. And so again, in the context of this new idea, we can think about how to go about doing that. But I think that's sort of the one new idea that had come out of the discussions that the committee had over the previous cycle. And
Carrie, just,
Yeah,
They're having trouble. They're having trouble with sound.
okay, oh, and Ava's here.
Can you mute the speaker itself?
We'll go back when this is fixed, because I noticed that Ava has joined us and need to,
Folks on the call, can y'all hear us? I've just changed over to my computer.
yes, let's see.
Yeah.
Ava, could you, for the record, you're operating under the remote participation policy. Could you unmute and state your name and the location you're calling from?
Sure. This is Ava Nguyen in McLean, Virginia.
Thank you so much. And we can all hear her. So we'll move forward. So, but just raise your hand or put in the chat if either of you want to say anything. We just finished up with the budget committee. Joe, thank you so much. Any comments on the budget this year? Great. Then I'll just give a quick update. If anybody has anything to contribute, had a brief conversation with Jerry Poggi and to talk a little bit about the legislative committee. We have meetings coming up, both July 7th executive committee and August 25th, that will allow us to finalize recommendations for the state priorities for housing, as well as again, any feedback or input into the budget process from a legislative, if there are policy issues. And so again, there was one outstanding issue from last time, which had been a recommendation for, I believe, the bond cap issue, something that Jerry was going to go offline with either staff and Rick Sullivan, maybe Nick and some others, to kind of write that up, because it's outside of, Jerry didn't feel comfortable and needed some outside help on that. And then we already had, of course, some other issues. So we're going to look at that and maybe bring that forward. And that was one of the ones where we were hoping that Jerry could work most closely with Linda Hoffman, who is your designated legislative leader.
Right, and if I may, sort of follow on that a little bit, our thinking on staff side is that we would assist AHAC in sort of kind of developing the concept. And, I will say that the FCRA, anything that has to do with the FCRHA and its operations directly, I think the RA need to be transmitted to the board from the FCRHA.
And then we can include it.
Right.
Great. So I'll, as I follow back up with Jerry, who couldn't make it today. So we'll probably, I know that,
Just on that.
go ahead.
DHCD is in the process of reevaluating how they're doing bond issuance or volume cap awards from the local insurer pool, which is with FCRH and the other housing authorities across the state. So it's probably a good time to have that conversation, and quite honestly, no one really knows exactly where it's all going to shake out with them. They had a call a month or so back, I guess it was, and my understanding was it was really just like, so tell us what you think. And they just kind of, obviously, different parts of the state have different thoughts on these sorts of things, and so stay tuned, I guess.
My guess, though, is that the outcome, unless we really have a voice in it, is not going to accrue to the benefit of the local housing agencies.
One, that is for sure.
Yeah.
That is for sure.
So then it becomes, what we can
Yeah, I mean, this may turn into, playing defense before anything else. So,
Well, then we'll follow up with you, leave it in their hands. We know people we can call on in terms of background to be able, again, to support what's moving forward. And certainly we can, is that being alerted, watching the FCRJ agenda, Tom, so we can endorse, support, or bring anything forward.
yeah, I think another issue that we're gonna need to work on with Jerry is, there's a suite of recommendations for improving the tax credit program at the federal level
Yeah,
that has bipartisan support, and, that I think that, it would be appropriate for AHAC certainly to ask the board that that be included in our federal legislative program.
great. That's great.
Yeah.
I was just wondering about that. Okay. So we'll take these recommendations, and we'll get with Jared before our June 23rd meeting. And then Mary Payton did ask that I convey, I think some of you, I think AHAC received her memo to all of the Board of Supervisors, sort of summarizing what was a combination of what we've discussed at AHAC, but really her work as a leader on the fair housing issue across the region, and certainly the NAACP position. And one of the things that she feels strongly about is that, and has asked me to bring forward, understanding what the role of the staff. And so I shared that Tom had already pursued dedicated staff as that moves to implementation, and the reason why. But knowing that AHAC certainly will want to comment and be part of conversations. But her big issue is before the Board of Supervisors looks at and approves the recommendations that going back to COG on July 11, that we had asked that the details be shared, just so people could see, and she has certainly asked for public review. And there hasn't been a public review process since, the original. So there's been, here's the COG process, everything was put out. Now Fairfax County has responded with some additional goals and input, but what has been in the public has been at a public meeting in South County and certainly at the Housing Committee. And so Mary's question is, should AHAC ask that before the Board of Supervisors approves this, that OREP initiate some additional public review besides the input hearings that were held? I hope I'm doing justice to this.
I think.
And then I needed some.
Yeah, I think you got it about right. And, what I would say to that is, we do have a time issue.
Yeah.
And, it's sort of number one. Number two, the additional goals that were put on were the product of the public process that we did have. And then finally, and again, I'm sort of speaking a bit in the third person because HCD is not in the lead on, the development plan. OREP is, but my understanding is that COG has advised us that we can continue to evolve our goals as we go along here. So I think, I just put that out there for food.
Thank you.
As food for thought.
What has been presented publicly about the addition of the 8 goals, there's not a lot of detail yet that has been shared, like what's going to go to the Board of Supervisors. Is it going to be beyond the 8 areas? So I think it's just more of a question of, is that going to be available for people to see, to comment in more detail? Or will this be an ongoing thing that our Fair Housing Committee can?
So I think the board is going to be asked to accept,
Those.
the draft as it is. With those additional goals, the details will be, as I recall, in the board item.
Okay.
There's going to need to be an implementation plan too that follows along, and I think that may be also real interest to Mary and and sort of the fair housing component of AHAC.
Well, I think AHAC at this point can at least, my recommendation would be that we reiterate with the board, you know, the importance of the process, acknowledge the public hearings, that they have, gone beyond the initial recommendations to add it, you know, and to thoughtfully consider, and that we want to be involved and continue, I think, in the implementation, ensuring that there is, as always, a robust public review process on an ongoing. Is that roughly, I think, and I'll because of timing and all of that, and not having OREP here at this table, or Carla Bruce, whose office I know will also be involved. But I'll report back to Mary, and I think that seems to be the best role for AHAC.
Right, and I can certainly ask a rep to weigh in too.
I'd like, yeah, that would be really important. I think there was such outstanding work done at just lifting up the issues and making us aware of, you know, there's a lot we need to do and that we've seen coming out of this. So really appreciate all that Mary's done, and some of it is, I don't know if I will never have what Miss Peg has in terms of, she's amazing. So with that, I'm just gonna sort of subcommittee updates. Is there anything I've missed on other issues? So really, we're coming down. We apologize. There was some back and forth. I think we even missed Rick on the meeting schedule. I had some conflicts with the AHAC exec, and then we had a regular conflict with a meeting that a committee that Megan staffs. So for now, what we've decided is, again, in terms of streamlining, we are proposing right now executive committee meetings July and August, and the August is now in lieu of September. We had planned to meet then. I think the primary focus here particularly would be ensuring that we have our language ready, certainly to influence the legislative process for the now federal, state, and all of that. Talk about the work plan for the year and be prepared as we go into the first full meeting of AHAC in September. But we will take a look for July 7th, whether it's needed, whether we can do a virtual check-in, since, you know, I'm a half hour late to every meeting now. But I'll check in and we'll get back to you.
The meeting starts at 9.
Then I'll be always on time.
I will be away.
On July 7th. So I think one of the things, since we will have met June 23rd, is whether we need that or whether it is okay if I work with the chairs to get started for the summer process, and we come together on August 25th in our swimsuits, and then maybe let's make a decision.
Let's do it all.
The swimsuit thing, I think
So being on some, so.
Let's take July off. Great. So there will be no executive committee meeting on July 7th. We are, however, and going back up, we will be meeting on June 23rd. So this will be sort of our, let's think about it as our annual meeting, kind of closing the year, but also beginning to set the stage for the year with one executive committee. So we will overtax and work in between, streamlined with those committees. So that's exciting. But now I wanted to, we talked a little bit about the continuum of care board. I don't know if we need to say anything more about that. Do you want to talk any more about that? It was approved by the Board of Supervisors. I can make sure if people haven't seen it. Maura, Tom, and Barnett had shared a copy with me, you know, of what was going forward, and it's really lifted from here to there. So that's exciting. We'll have more information maybe from Tom once the membership is appointed and all of that. And then
Tom will be at the June 23rd meeting. It'll be Diana Pina.
Okay.
She'll give a presentation on that.
Okay. All right. And would you, Megan, would you like to update us on that preservation?
Sure. And we'll have a fuller presentation at the June 23rd meeting with Bree Fuller. But I just wanted to let you all know that the administrative guidelines for the Affordable Housing Preservation Policy are online now, and there's public comment until June 30th. So we'll have that. We have that up and available. And if you have any questions, you could reach out to me or Bree.
And she's having like public engagement Zoom, like Teams meetings, right? next
Correct.
week.
There's two scheduled for next Tuesday,
Yeah.
one at lunch and then one in the evening.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep, and that's up online as well.
Yeah.
So, and if, again, I can send out that information to AHAC.
Yeah, maybe, and then the follow-up for our June 23rd meeting.
Okay.
Anything else? I know the planning commission is hearing the Reston comprehensive, the master plan for Reston next week. And so that will kick off some fun things. And just leave it at that. So anything else?
Just one last thing, if I could, before we part. I know in Regina's absence, I can just, tell you that we are working really hard to continue to keep the communication flowing. We might not catch everything, but we're gonna continue to do the very best we can. But if you have any questions or if there's, something that you feel like we need to kind of communicate to the fuller group, just, as of right now, just, communicate to myself or to Megan, we'll figure out how to make sure that, things like events or upcoming public hearings, those sorts of things where Regina was both very good and had the time to actually, do that. If you can just kind of, help support us with that, that would be really helpful.
And
And
I
have
will
patience.
circle up.
Sorry.
Have patience.
And
Yes.
yes, please be patient as we continue to. Again, we are not staffed to do this, so we're just sort of borrowing, as best we can to serve you as best as we possibly are able to.
And I am borrowing some time from my part-time remote assistant to help with this, to do a better job. She's agreed to add some hours to her contract. But if one of the questions I had, it may be as your org chart gets updated with positions, and I can't remember, do we have a communications PIO?
She started on Monday.
Okay. And that will help in terms of the updates to the website, or you all still have to do all the
It should.
okay,
It should.
sort of public notice and posting materials, because we get questions about that, and that's one of the reasons we need to know when a meeting is being scheduled, so we have plenty of time to do everything right. Okay, that's great, Tom.
And just a comment from Dr. Kincannon in the chat. He was asking for the North Hill information. So I sent you an email and Ben an email, so we can send that out.
Right. Yeah, we'll send out a kind of a reminder that has the event details. You can actually go, I think it has an Eventbrite sort of link where you can go and sign up to be there. And Carrie, we would sure love to see you there.
He did.
Just it's been a long road. Couldn't have gotten there without your support too. And yeah, I would just, if you can make the time to be there, to see that it really happened.
It's been many years we were working on that, hasn't it?
Yes, indeed. Yes, sir. So, we'll get out.
Ava, I'm going to follow up with you. I have lots of questions about the state of the industry now and some things we're seeing, and just, so I have some things I'd love to chat with you about offline and bring it in terms of some of our issues around housing, but I'll follow up with you.
Oh, I would love that. And just good news is finally NBAR will be hosting a forum on affordable housing or attainable housing. And Jill is going to be our moderator on the 29th. So finally, we were able to kind of bring, the topic up at our association. So stay tuned. I'll report on that more when I find more who the panelists will be with Josh.
That's terrific, Josh. Oh, that's great. So if you'll get that, we'll make sure we share that information.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Anything else? For the order on a Friday morning? Thank you all so much for coming out. This is great. So we'll see you June 23rd. We will be meeting somewhere in the government center. Not at 10.
Here.
It just proves, I close the meeting record now, but it's worse to drive and be talking with someone, having a serious conversation than I think I'm than drinking and driving. I think is not possible for some people. And my car just went on autopilot.
Are you suggesting a comparative experiment?
So I quit that a long time ago, but anyways, I pulled in, parked, got out of my car and went.
Yeah,
So
we've all been there. It's
Yeah, we've
obvious.
been
All of it, for sure.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
And good to see everybody. Have a good start of the